Welcome back to my channel and to another reaction video. This time I'll be checking out the United Terran Protectorates for Stellaris Invicta Season 2.
Among the many exhibits in the great museums of Earth are those that depict the eras in human history, some not so long ago, that are today as alien as any of the Xenos civilizations discovered beyond the far frontier. Behind glass displays, visitors marvel at the relics of ancient battles, the crumbling accounts of great disasters, famine, and strife. It seems impossible that once there had been a time when mankind turned its swords upon one another, when greed and corruption left tens of millions to die beneath the jackboot of tyranny, when the extinction of the human race was not only possible, but likely. But the most beloved exhibit is always the one that shows how the Age of Despair ended. The day that great lights from above pierced through the smoke of ruined cities and burning fields and brought humanity into contact with their collaborators. And even as centuries of progress and triumph consigned that great moment further into history, none have ever forgotten that this was the dawn of the United Terran Protectorates. By the mid-2100s, mankind's efforts to colonize distant stars had collapsed. Sirius, Tau Ceti, and Epsilon Indi, sites of the first extrasolar colonies, languished, unable to provide the raw resources that Earth so desperately needed. With the bounties of space still out of reach and the efforts across the solar system insufficient, the empires of Earth grew desperate. On March 1st, 2159, the great leaders of mankind, its kings, queens, and nobility, declared that their subjects did not deserve them. In their hypocrisy, they blamed their own failures on those who had suffered most under them. Together, they gathered what little wealth and power remained, and in a grand flotilla, the Earhart evacuation effort set off for the paradise world of Antares to begin anew. All others would be left to die. On Earth, the ever-expanding ecological collapse left entire regions of the planet uninhabitable, and the ensuing refugee crisis dissolved nations. To protect what little remained from those outside their borders, the last kingdoms went to war and only hastened the destruction of their world. When the Great Lights first appeared, millions grew fearful it was some new weapon deployed by their enemies, or perhaps even the wrath of God. The great forms that emerged from the light dwarfed even the largest remaining cities, and it was clear that whatever they were not the work of man. Then came the realization that they were neither weapons nor the divine, but travelers from across the stars. The first representatives of the collaborators that appeared across the world came not as conquerors, but as saviors. The early decades were difficult, for mankind of that era was prone to suspicion and hatred. Many feared the collaborators, but through their efforts came miracles. Almost overnight, human civilization was transformed. Advanced technologies made gardens out of deserts, riches out of poverty, and joy out of anguish. The archaic forms of governance that for so long had hindered the development of mankind were cast away, and democracy, the will of the people, flourished in its place. As all of Earth was put on this great new path, the collaborators made their preparations to leave, satisfied that their work was now done. But the people of Earth asked that they stay. It was clear to mankind that there was still so much to learn from the collaborators, and the feeling that a great debt must be repaid. In a profound ceremony, the collaborators graciously accepted stewardship over the Earth, declaring it the newest shining jewel in a great crown of starfaring planets. Humanity celebrated as old kingdoms were dissolved and Terran protectorates established in their place. With the blessing of the collaborators, mankind again set forth on its own journey to the stars, determined to succeed where before they had failed. One by one, the old colonies were reclaimed, and there arose a deep feeling that justice had been done when it was discovered that the Earhart evacuation effort had never reached their destination. New star systems were charted and colonized as well, and for mankind's efforts, the United Terran Protectorates were rewarded. Enormous structures, thousands of years beyond anything mankind might build, were bestowed by the collaborators. From each came a wealth of energy and natural resources, enough to sustain the whole of human civilization forever.
Forever, huh?
When the first xenospecies were discovered, the Protectorates looked upon them with the same sense of sorrow and compassion that the collaborators had displayed towards mankind.
And
Many races
such a cool
across the
design.
galaxy had been allowed to develop without a firm guiding hand, and their ceaseless wars against one another could not be allowed to go on. When the United Terran Protectorates petitioned the collaborators to allow them to bring outsiders into the fold, the patrons of mankind were pleased, and revealed that this had been their intentions all along. Today, the United Terran Protectorates stand as a bulwark of stability and order in an increasingly chaotic galaxy. As a self-styled enlightened democracy, absolute power is invested in the President of the Executive Council, the only individual permitted unrestricted contact with the collaborators. The Executive Council itself serves as a body of the President's highest human advisors, appointed from each of the 311 national protectorates. While various presidents might name a few dozen amongst the Council's number to their personal cabinet, generally its members are organized into a variety of committees, each specializing in a particular field. While the Executive Council has the ability to draft and implement laws, they are ultimately subordinate to the will of the collaborators, which typically reveals itself through the directives of the President. The National Protectorates, or NPs, have very little power in themselves, and primarily serve to implement policy decided at the federal level or individual collaborators. Many of the NPs have been assigned to a particular type of industry, with manufacturing protectorates, agricultural protectorates, and energy protectorates the most common. While only the Executive Council maintains extensive two-way communications with the collaborators, many NPs have a high advocate. This individual, selected from among the ranks of the collaborators, serves as an NP's dedicated benefactor, often issuing decrees or directives that overrule any local legislation. While the process of how a high advocate is selected from among the collaborators remains unknown, it can occur in a number of different ways. It is not uncommon for a high advocate to be replaced without warning, and the focus of an entire national protectorate drastically altered to suit the needs of their new patron. It is also not unheard of for national protectorates to go to war with one another on the whims of their respected high advocates, with the losing realm incorporated into the domain of the winner. In at least one instance, the Terran citizens of one protectorate were delighted to learn that they had been given to their high advocate as part of what might be described as her coming-of-age ceremony. Regardless of what industry or directive each national protectorate pursues, their primary function is providing material towards the armed forces. This material takes many forms, from ration packs and other consumables, to military hardware, to manpower. It is directed into the United Terran Protectorate's three primary branches: the Protectorate Navy, Protectorate Army, and the Protectorate Civil Defense Corps. The Protectorate Navy and Army serve as the collaborators' expeditionary forces, granted the authority to bring new worlds into the fold. They aid in the transition of foreign civilizations into either new protectorates administered directly by the UTP or other sovereign territories under the collaborators. The Civil Defense Corps, by contrast, are deployed as garrison detachments across various national protectorates to keep local populations secure and protected. Military service is seen as the highest form of patriotism within the UTP, the most noble means of fulfilling a kind of social contract known informally as the Great Debt. The Great Debt is one of the central tenets of Terran civilization, and refers to an immense feeling of obligation within the general populace to their collaborators, and the need to repay them for saving mankind. This payment takes many forms, but the most famous examples are the regiments and divisions taken from the Army and Navy to serve immediately under the collaborators in distant regions of the galaxy. The campaigns undertaken by the Protectorate's armed forces have brought not only a renewed feeling of pride to humanity, but new worlds and new laborers. In every national protectorate, Thymodians, Tavarites, Zelvan, and Beldros can all be found working together to earn their eventual citizenship. It is a concrete reminder of the collaborators' intense desire to see all races of the galaxy come together for the common good. Despite these noble intentions, the wider galaxy has so far rejected the benevolence of the collaborators. While the United Terran Protectorates once enjoyed a place of prominence as a council member in the early days of the galactic community, it has since been shunned and denied its rightful status. Even after the collaborators moved to save the galaxy from the rise of a volatile Bantherian warlord, the various Xeno civilizations have refused to ascend above their petty rivalries and wars. It is with a profound sense of sadness that many within the Protectorates now see further conflict as the only way by which peace and stability might be achieved. The failures of mankind being repeated across the galaxy by the untamed Xenos masses has traditionally been used by the collaborators to instill a feeling of solace within the few humans afforded the knowledge of their place within the galaxy. When permitted to understand the depths of suffering within alien empires, every human president, admiral, administrator, and diplomat recognizes the superiority of their own society. Education must be limited, information curated. Only then will humanity be free. It is only in private that the leaders of the Terran Protectorates express their doubts. They do so in secluded retreats.
They are very much
far
slaves
outside,
at this
it
point.
is hoped, the capacity of the collaborators to overhear. The survival of the Earhart evacuation flotilla was a tremendous shock, and at the request of their patrons, contact with their lost cousins has been severed. Yet even the brief interactions within the galactic community and the reconnaissance conducted on their worlds has given rise to a troubling idea. The history of the Earhart flotilla and the Confederate republics of Antares it gave rise to paint a very different picture than the one depicted in the museums of Earth. Once the leaders of the UTP would never have questioned the teachings of the collaborators, now they look upon the terrible craters where once stood the great and ancient cities of mankind with unease. Diplomats assigned to the galactic community are being replaced more and more quickly, predecessors vanishing from every record. If the most dire theories are true, then the Terran Protectorates have been lied to for centuries and survive now only as captives inside a prison that most are too blind to see. But perhaps, in a distant corner of the galaxy once hidden within a miasma beyond even the sight of the collaborators, the means to be truly free are finally within reach.
Well, there you have it, folks. United Terran Protectorates, and yep. So, well, there you have it, folks. United Terran Protectorates, and yeah, they didn't mention the collaborators by name, but I'm guessing that's the Shrek Empire, or at very least some species that serves the Shrek Empire. But yeah, I mean, it this didn't really add anything anything new to what we already know. I mean, it goes to detail exactly what happened after the Earth nobility left with the flotilla. They left Earth behind to essentially destroy itself, but then the aliens came and started teaching them stuff, and it was an interesting part when the collaborators were already leaving, but then humanity was like, no, please stay behind, teach us more, and then they graciously decided to stay. And I mean, that was a bit of a red flag. Like, well, I don't think they were ever planning to truly leave, but yeah, I think they had a plan to implement this kind of sense of gratification to humans, that they'd ask them to stay. So I don't know. feel like that way they could easily add humanity into their galactic community as servants rather than. I mean, humans have always had. I mean, human history is full of stories of how humans see them as superior. So, if humanity had joined the galactic community as such, free, they'd try to be a dominant species, but this way they could control them. And I mean, they did mention later that only the highest ranking members know their place in the galactic stage. But yeah, the early days of the uh, space exploration, they revived old colonies and added other species that had similar history than Earth, fighting amongst each other and such, adding those to the uh, adding those to their ranks. But yeah, then things turned south pretty fast, and humanity is now becoming more and more like slaves. They have very little voice in the galactic affairs, and yeah, after they defeated the Banthurians and the Khan, they found out about that the Antares flotilla had in fact survived, and now there was a whole free society living somewhere in space. So now the collaborators are afraid that what that will bring to Earth. Yeah, very excited where the story goes. I'd expect a shitstorm to hit all over the place. But yeah, very interesting. And yeah, this was by far a very sad episode. And I swear I have heard the music they put on this video somewhere. I just can't name it. I've heard it a bunch of times. I need to look that up later. But anyway, what do you guys think? Write your thoughts down below. Hope you enjoyed my reaction. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you want, and I will see you in another video. Bye.